In 1976, a young Japanese doctor named Makoto Suzuki came to Okinawa to help establish community medicine at the island's new medical school. He wasn't looking for the secret to a long life, but then he began meeting people in their 90s, and even past 100. What surprised him wasn't simply their age. It was what some of them could still do. They walked to see friends, tended small gardens, prepared meals, cared for their homes. They were still participating in the ordinary routines of their own lives. And that raised a question Suzuki would spend decades trying to understand. Why were so many people here not only living longer, but remaining remarkably capable along the way? At first, genetics seemed like the obvious answer. Genes certainly mattered. But the deeper researchers looked, the more complicated the picture became. There was no miracle food, no secret workout, no supplement. What they found instead were patterns repeated quietly for decades. How people moved, how they ate, who they spent time with, how they responded to hardship, and why they still had reasons to get up in the morning. And after 60, I think that's where the Okinawan story becomes personal. Because most of us aren't really dreaming about becoming 100. We want something simpler, to get out of a chair without thinking about it, to walk out the front door whenever we choose, to remember the people we love, to have someone notice when we don't show up, and to wake up with something still worth getting up for. No lifestyle can promise us that future. But Okinawa may offer clues for protecting more of it. And strangely, the first clue has nothing to do with food or exercise. It begins with a few people around a table and one empty chair that would never go unnoticed. In Okinawa, there is an old tradition called moai. It began as a form of mutual support within the community. Over time, for many people, it became something even more valuable, a small circle that kept showing up for one another, sometimes for decades. They ate together, talked, helped when someone struggled. And if someone didn't arrive, somebody noticed. That becomes more important as we grow older. When we're young, connection often happens without much effort. Work gives us coworkers. Children bring school events and busy weekends. Then retirement comes. Children move away. Friends move or pass on. A spouse who once sat across from you at breakfast may no longer be there. And without one dramatic moment, your world can quietly become smaller. Research on healthy aging has repeatedly associated strong social connection with better health and well-being. But moai reveals something statistics don't quite capture. It's not simply having friends, it's being expected. If someone expects you for a morning walk, you're more likely to put on your shoes and go. If someone knows your routines, they may notice when something changes, and you don't need 5 childhood friends in Okinawa to create that. Maybe it's one friend every Wednesday, a Sunday phone call, coffee with 2 neighbors once a month. The number isn't important. The rhythm is, because one of the quiet protections against growing old alone may be having somewhere your presence matters. But even if someone is waiting outside your door, your body still has to get you there. And this is where traditional Okinawan life reveals something else. In an older Okinawan home, people often sat lower, sometimes on the floor. That meant going down and getting back up again. Then there was gardening, walking, hanging laundry, carrying things, sweeping, small movements scattered across an entire day. Nobody called it exercise. The Japanese word ugoku simply means to move, and that's the idea worth borrowing here. As we age, muscle and strength tend to decline, particularly when we stop asking much of them. Eventually, that can show up in places that matter far more than a gym. Getting out of a chair, climbing stairs, carrying a bag, catching your balance, small abilities until they're gone. Modern life is remarkably good at removing movement. Cars, elevators, delivery services, remote controls, and many of those conveniences are wonderful, especially when pain, fatigue, or physical limitations make daily tasks difficult. But there's a trade hiding inside convenience. Sometimes, when we remove effort, we also remove a reason for the body to keep practicing. That doesn't mean you should suddenly start sitting on the floor like an Okinawan elder. For some people, that wouldn't be safe at all. The lesson is much simpler. Don't make exercise the only time your body is needed. Walk while talking to a friend. Tend a few plants. Take the stairs when they're safe and comfortable. Stand up occasionally instead of arranging your entire day around a chair. Let life contribute some of the movement. Because after 60, movement becomes less about burning calories and more about protecting freedom. The freedom to keep doing things for yourself. And then comes another interesting moment. After all that movement, you sit down to eat. At an Okinawan table, you may hear an old phrase, hara hachibu. It's commonly understood as eating until you're about 80% full. Not hungry, just not stuffed. The percentage shouldn't be treated like a precise biological measurement. The deeper idea is simply to notice enough before too much. And that's surprisingly easy to miss. How often do we stop eating because the plate is empty, or the bag is empty, or the television show ends? Fullness isn't an instant switch. As we eat, the digestive system and brain communicate through several physical and hormonal signals, and that takes time. So when we eat quickly or distractedly, it's easier to keep going before satisfaction has fully registered. But hara hachibu doesn't mean eating as little as possible. That's particularly important as we grow older, when adequate nutrition, including enough protein, helps support muscle and strength. The useful lesson is attention. Try something simple. Halfway through one meal, put your fork down for a moment. Then ask, am I still hungry, or am I simply still eating? No calorie counting. No special diet, just a pause, but knowing when to stop is only half the story. Because what was actually inside the bowl? For generations, traditional Okinawan meals were remarkably simple. Imagine lunch as a bowl of soup, vegetables, tofu, or another soy food, perhaps some fish, and very often sweet potato. It didn't look like a longevity diet. It looked like lunch. And that's important. There is an Okinawan expression, nuchi gusui, often translated as food is medicine, not because food replaces medicine. It doesn't. The idea is that what we eat repeatedly becomes part of the environment our body lives in every day. The sweet potato wasn't magic, neither was tofu. The pattern mattered more than any single ingredient. And that makes the lesson surprisingly easy to bring home. You don't need to eat Japanese food, beans, vegetables, oatmeal, potatoes, fruit, whole grains, eggs, fish, yogurt. The exact foods can change with your culture, budget, health, and preferences. What matters is building ordinary meals around nourishing foods you can actually enjoy again next week. Because the meal that supports you isn't the spectacular one you eat once, it's the one you're willing to return to. But food can nourish the body without quieting the mind, and this is where the Okinawan story becomes deeper. Some of the older generations Dr. Suzuki encountered had lived through war, loss, scarcity, and the rebuilding of their communities. Their lives were not peaceful because nothing painful happened. They had simply lived long enough to discover something most of us eventually learn. Life doesn't wait until we're ready. Many of us spend decades thinking peace will arrive later, after the children are settled, after retirement, after the bills are paid, after the test results come back. Then, I'll relax. But by 60 or 70, you already know the truth. One worry leaves. Another eventually knocks. A Japanese idea that helps describe another way of meeting those moments is seijaku, tranquility, or stillness. Not a perfectly quiet life. A quiet place inside an imperfect one. It might be making tea without looking at your phone, watering plants in the morning, sitting near a window, walking after dinner without trying to solve tomorrow at the same time. These things don't remove stress. They give the mind somewhere to return. And perhaps this is one of the strange gifts of growing older. When we're young, strength often means fixing things. Later, we discover there are things we cannot fix. A person we miss, a body that is changing, a decision we cannot undo. Sometimes another kind of strength begins when we can say, "This matters, but I don't have to solve it tonight." So don't wait for life to become perfectly peaceful. Find 5 quiet minutes inside the life you already have. And once you begin looking at ordinary moments that way, even something as mundane as cleaning starts to look different. In Japan, soji simply refers to cleaning. Sweep the floor, wipe the table, put a cup back where it belongs, open a window. The point isn't to keep a perfect home. It's to keep small disorder from becoming tomorrow's burden. 5 minutes tonight can mean one less pile waiting in the morning, one clear counter, one room that feels manageable. And that matters as we age, because a home should support the life happening inside it, not constantly demand recovery from us. So maybe you wipe the kitchen counter after dinner, put 5 things back where they belong, then stop. You're not trying to create a Japanese home. You're simply creating a home that's a little easier to live in tomorrow. But that raises a deeper question. Why does tomorrow matter? And that brings us to a Japanese idea that has become famous around the world. Ikigai. It's often translated as your reason for being. Unfortunately, that can make it sound enormous. Find your passion. Discover your destiny. Change the world. But purpose in later life can be much smaller. A garden that needs watering. A grandchild who expects lunch on Sunday. A dog waiting by the door. A neighbor who depends on you. Something that gives tomorrow a little shape. This becomes especially important after retirement. For 40 years, work may have told you when to wake up, where to go, who needed you, and what had to be done. Then one day, the calendar opens. At first, that freedom can feel wonderful, but underneath it, another question may slowly appear. Where am I still needed? You don't need a new career at 70 to answer it. Maybe you volunteer once a week, grow tomatoes, cook for someone, help with your grandchildren. Learn something you kept postponing because life was always too busy. Purpose doesn't have to impress anyone. It only has to keep you participating. Perhaps that's the gentler side of Ikigai. Not one grand purpose you must discover, but small reasons to remain involved in tomorrow. And eventually, all these ideas lead back to one final Okinawan expression, nankuru naisa. It's often loosely translated as, "things will work out in time," but it isn't permission to sit back and hope life fixes itself. It's closer to this. Do what you can today, then allow tomorrow to arrive in its own time. And after everything we've seen, perhaps that's the most important part of the Okinawan story. There was never one secret. These patterns worked together. People had reasons to connect, reasons to move, meals that didn't need to be extraordinary, homes that still asked for a little care, quiet moments to return to, and reasons for tomorrow to matter. None of that guarantees 100 years. Dr. Suzuki's work never gave us that kind of promise. Perhaps it gave us something more useful, a different way to think about the years ahead. So don't try to adopt 8 Japanese habits tomorrow morning. Choose one small thing. Call the friend you've been meaning to call. Take a walk. Eat dinner a little more slowly. Clear one corner of your kitchen. Find 5 quiet minutes. Or ask yourself one question before bed. What still needs me tomorrow? Because maybe the goal was never to control how long life lasts. Maybe it's to protect our ability to keep taking part in it, to keep walking through our own front door, to keep sitting at the table with people who know our name, to keep caring for something, to keep being expected somewhere, and to wake up tomorrow morning with another ordinary day that still feels like ours.